thank you for joining us for another episode on the Thrive in Wabash County podcast. Today, I am joined with a very special guest who is no stranger to the microphone and some of Bob's career, but Bob Ferguson, the clerk treasurer of the town of Roann. Welcome to the Thrive in Wabash County podcast.
Hey, thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and I thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. I'm really excited to have you on the show. You are one of those people that ever since I got to Wabash County and met you and got to start on the work of Imagine 185, that I just have really appreciated the opportunity to work alongside you on a variety of projects, some of which we'll talk about today, but just one of those people whose story I've been excited to share as a part of this podcast.
It is a story.
Absolutely.
A long story. When you get to my age, then you always have a long story. But yeah, I've had a lot of time here in Wabash County, and I love it. I just love Wabash County, period.
Absolutely. And anybody that knows you knows your heart and passion for the town of Roann, which is not pronounced Rowan, as some folks may say.
Nope.
But Bob, for the listeners, both in Wabash County that may not know a lot about the town of Roann, or if folks listening outside of Wabash County, what do people need to know about the town of Roann?
Well, the first thing to know is we have so many things that people can come and visit. We have the fish ladder, which I love that we have a fish ladder in our area. Of course, we have the covered bridge.
And Bob, before we move from the fish ladder, for somebody like myself that before I met you and started working in the town of Roann, what is a fish ladder?
Well, a fish ladder is when the fish go upstream to spawn, all of a sudden the head fish will hit something with his nose and he'll say, "Damn." And that's what it is. And they have to figure a way to get around it. Well, our fish ladder will go right around and go up, and then they can go ahead and go upstream. And not only that, but they're able to put a net in there at certain times of the year, and then they can catch the fish, and then they tag them, and they can watch how the fish go through the Eel River, which is very cool.
And Bob, you mentioned the covered bridge, you mentioned the fish ladder, and so one thing that's unique about Wabash County is 4 of our 5 incorporated city or towns have a river that runs through them, Roann being one of those, and so the Eel River runs through both the town of North Manchester and Roann.
And it's nice because, some people will take trips and go up the river or down the river, probably would be easier. And they like to get in their canoes and their kayaks and do that travel. And I've never seen that part of Wabash County because I'm not one to get in a canoe and go anyplace. But I would imagine that's a beautiful area to go through.
Bob, you have a very unique story of growing up in Roann and your time in Roann, but I bring it up now because when you were showing me the fish ladder and the Stockdale Mill out there, you were telling me that story. And so if you don't feel comfortable sharing it now, I'd like the listener to know you may not have been down the river in a canoe or a kayak, but you have a unique connection to the Eel River.
I do, and it's a connection that my father and I share. When I was first married, I was 18 when I was first married, and I had gone off to the military, and I was home on leave, and I was probably about 19, maybe, going on 20, and my father wanted to go fishing, and there was a log that kind of went right, it was right there where the fish ladder is right now, and you could look across the river, and you could see the mill, and you seen the dam, and my dad and I are sitting there, and we're fishing. And it's starting to get a little late. And all of a sudden, my father screams, "Ow!" And I said, "What's the matter, Dad?" And he said, "Well, I just got bit by a snake." I said, "You got bit by a snake?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Quick, hand me my tackle box." And I handed him his tackle box, and he pulled out a pint of Old Granddad. And he cracked the Old Granddad, took a big sip of it, and said, "Oh, that's snake bite medicine. You reckon a snake bit you too?" And my dad and I sat on that log all night long, and sharing snake bite medicine for the very first time. And the next morning, well, it got really late, and my dad looked at me and he said, "I can't take you home looking like this." Because he would be taking me back to not only my mom, but also my wife. And so we fell asleep in the back of the station wagon, woke up about 1 o'clock in the next afternoon. We got home, and my mom just looked at us and said, "Where have you been?" And Dad said, "Fishing." And she said, "Where are your fish?" Of course, we didn't have any fish, but we both probably looked pretty bad for the long nights. But we had a lot of fun. That's one story I've got about my father that I'll remember for the rest of my life. It was a good time.
So did you grow up in the town of Roann then, Bob?
I did not. Although I spent a lot of time there, I grew up in Chili, or as some people like to say, Chile, but I lived on the Warsaw Trail, about 7, 8 miles out of Roann. So, of course, I worked for all the farmers in the area, baling hay and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time in Roann, not only at the restaurant back then, but also I was part of the North Miami Marching Band. And so we always went to the Roann Parade and marched in the parade as a teenager. So, yeah, I've been around that area most of my life. And when I was first born, I was born in Peru, but then my parents actually lived in Rich Valley in my grandparents' front yard in a little bitty trailer. So when I was first born, I lived right there in Rich Valley, which is just down from Roann. So it was pretty cool in that area. And we moved from there and went to Lucan's Lake. So the whole area is something that I'm very, very familiar with.
Absolutely. Bob, one thing I appreciate about Roann is there is rich history that's along the Eel River, the Stockdale Mill, which I want to talk about just in a minute. But then there's this balance of new energy and vibrancy of new things that are coming to the town of Roann as well, and investments in the community that I know we're going to spend some time talking about. But just being that you grew up in and around the town of Roann, speak a little bit maybe more to some of those assets that the community has around the river and the downtown before we transition to maybe what's up and coming in the town of Roann.
Well, there are so many things that you can do, and there's brand new things coming in all the time. Of course, in Roann, they had the restaurant, so all the farmers from around the area would usually take their farm hands or the people baling hay, and you'd go in and grab a bite to eat and something to drink, and that was always really cool. And then my parents this was back in the 70s, it might have been in the 80s. My parents even had a small store there in Roann where they used to sell televisions, but my parents sold jackets and clothing and stuff like that they were getting out of Florida. Because at that time, my father was driving for a company out of Florida. I, too, was driving for that same company out of Florida, and he could pick up things while he was down there and have them shipped back and things like that. So we had that. Of course, the log cabin has been there for a long, long time. I think that first went up in the 60s, I believe, which is really cool to see the log cabin and see how people lived back in that period of time. Of course, the covered bridge, even with the fire that they had in the 80s, they were able to get everything redone and get all of that back to where it looks like it does now. And it's a place that everybody likes to go and see that part of Roann, is the covered bridge, of course. And we have a Carnegie Library, which, by the way, still is in operation. And very few Carnegie libraries are still in operation, or either they're gone, they've either had to be razed, or they've burnt down, or things like that. or they've been turned into other things like a law office right here in Wabash County. There's a law office that used to be a Carnegie Library. And that's neat to be able to say, we have a Carnegie Library, and not only do we have that, but it is operational. And they have a summer reading program for the kids, which is really, really special. Of course, we've got the N&W, I think it's which railroad that's from. I think it's from N&W. We have a wooden side caboose right in the middle of town. And that's pretty cool, too, because there's not very many of those around. And I remember when some railroad enthusiasts came into town to see that caboose. So we've got people from all over, not only Indiana, but all over the United States. And we may have people from other countries. I have no idea. We don't get to see everybody that comes into town, but we've probably got people that come into Roann, and we are becoming not just, oh, I was driving through Roann and seen a caboose. No, we've become a destination. People are coming to Roann to see some of the things that we have.
Absolutely, Bob. You talk a little bit about one of those occasions that people come to the town of Roann from all over the place is the Covered Bridge Festival. You talked a little bit about the Covered Bridge, but just for our listeners that may not have been to the Covered Bridge Festival, when typically is it, and how big of an event and destination experience is that for the town of Roann?
Well, it's always the first weekend after Labor Day. And so that's kind of easy for us to remember. It took me a long time to figure it out because I always get Labor Day and Memorial Day mixed up. So I have to stop and think about it for a minute. But yes, it is the first weekend after Labor Day. And then they have all kinds of things going on. At one time, there might be 3 bands playing in the town of Roann all at the same time. You have something going on at the north, the south, and the center stage. So, I mean, there's always something going on. There's things to see. There's all kinds of businesses that come in. They have kettle corn, and they have all kinds of things like that that they sell in the downtown area. And mostly it's the entertainment that people come in to see. I know that I'm not sure what groups that they have, but they're always top-notch groups. And that's what's really, really cool is that it's not just a couple people thrown together and put onto a stage, but yet they bring in these very, very, very good groups.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Bob. You talk a little bit about the downtown area in Roann and some of the historic businesses that have been there, the train car, the library being near downtown, the covered bridge kind of being the anchor on the other side of town. On the Thrive in Wabash County podcast, we have often talked about the importance of a vibrant downtown and how that relates to the overall vision of being able to attract young people, young families, individuals of all ages to a community. You have to have that vibrancy in downtown. And Roann's experiencing some of those investment, some of that vibrancy. Speak a little bit about some of the changes that downtown Roann has seen, both from new businesses and just everyday amenities that the town's seen in the last couple of years.
We have a great Main Street. The Heritage Group, they are outstanding. We were the smallest Main Street organization in the state of Indiana. Now I understand that there is another town in the state of Indiana that is smaller than Roann that also has a Main Street organization. But oddly enough, it's in Wabash County, it's LaGros. And that makes it even more special because not only were we the smallest, but now there's another group, but it's right here in Wabash County. So that means a lot to me that Wabash County is still number one. Wabash County has the smallest Main Street organization, and they have the 2 smallest Main Street organizations, and they're doing something. They're not just letting things go. Years and years ago, my wife and I had a business in North Manchester, and I was on the chamber. I was one of the officers in the chamber, and also I was the president of Main Street in North Manchester. And I knew how much work it was to get a Main Street going, and not only that, to keep it going, and all the things that you have to do to make sure that Main Street is following all of the rules and regulations and keeping up with the time. And I knew it was going to be quite a deal. And then all of a sudden, some people started getting involved. Jerry Nelson, and he wanted to be part of it. And it just started growing and growing and growing. And then Main Street is doing an outstanding job in the town of Roann. When you look at one of the sides of the building, it has a mural on it. That was done by Main Street and the Office of Community Rural Affairs. I have to be careful not to use acronyms all the time. But that was done by them. And now Main Street's talking about another mural in town going up someplace. And not only that, but the Main Street, when you look down through the middle of town right now on Chippewa, you'll see a lot of sidewalks, brand new sidewalks. You see all of these light posts downtown. And that was done by Main Street. And that is a big deal.
Bob, you've been an integral part of Wabash County's Imagine 185 initiative, which we'll get a little more into here shortly. But one thing that we talk about, Imagine 185 was all around attracting and retaining our population, right? Attracting, retaining young families and individuals of all ages. Our communities have identified for a long time, but even through that process, that a key piece of population attraction and retention is a vibrant downtown. And we're extremely fortunate in Wabash County that each of our communities have an organization that's focused on that and cultivating that downtown buzz that at all levels, right? That's not the Fishers, the Carmel, or the Fort Wayne, right? We're never going to be that. Our communities don't want to be that. But it's important, right, that a community has that buzz. Speak a little bit, if you will, to some of the investments that Roann and Roann Community Heritage, Roann's Main Street organization, is making in the downtown.
Well, that's our new Main Street organization, and they are doing so much. At one time, it was the smallest Main Street in the state of Indiana. No longer is it the smallest group in the state of Indiana. We now have LeGros. Congratulations to LeGros for now being one of the Main Street organizations, which I think is very cool, because that means that the two smallest organizations that Main Street has is right here in Wabash County. That's got to be exciting for Wabash County, because that means that Wabash County is constantly doing something to grow and to do more. And our Main Street organization just finished they did a mural. That was one of their first things that they did. And they did that with help of OKRA, Office of Community Rural Affairs. I'll try not to use any acronyms. But they did the mural first. I know they have plans on doing another mural someplace in town. But the big thing that they did was they took care of all the downtown area, the sidewalks, brand new sidewalks, all of the light posts that you see down through the middle of town. That was all done by Main Street. And the majority of that was done with donations, not by tax dollars, because that's what you see a lot of the time when there's a streetscape going on. A lot of that's done with tax dollars. That's not what happened in the town of Roann. These guys did this by having different things, like they did strawberry shortcake fundraisers. They did all kinds of fundraisers. They were able to get money from here and from there. And they would sell tickets at the festival, anything that they could do. And they put that together using donations. And when you look at the enormity of that project, going all the way from 16 all the way down to the library, wow, how does people do that kind of thing? Through just donations. And that's really, really exciting. It's a great organization. And I'm so happy that we have one.
It's really created a lot of vibrancy in downtown Rowan by having the sidewalks and the new lights, right? It's something that we may take for granted, but it's so critically important to the downtown. And I know that there's Bailey's Pizza Parlor continues to work and invest in their business as kind of a destination location, restaurant, eatery, as well as In-Laws is downtown Rowan now. And I think that those businesses will continue to see increased traffic because of the things like the improved lighting and sidewalks in the downtown. It's so critically important, Bob. But I also believe that project as a whole is a great snapshot of one thing we talk a lot about on this podcast, and it's just the people in our community, the generosity that exists in Wabash County that makes these initiatives and projects possible, not just from the private donations that you speak to, that local units of government that are the size, all local units of government, but especially the size of the town of Rowan, you all aren't sitting on piles of cash that are coming in, right? It's a tight budget. And so partnerships with community organizations and private individuals are critical for those pieces that are important to downtown, but otherwise may not be possible without private support. So that's really cool. But the other part is that it speaks to the Rowan Community Heritage, the Main Street group in that project, volunteer led, right? It's
Absolutely.
100% volunteer led. So again, it's Wabash County stepping up as a community, and in the town of Rowan, a smaller one of our communities, to donate their time and resources, hard-earned time and resources, to support projects like that that benefit the community.
Absolutely. And you go from business to business, like Lynn's Restaurant. They do so much for park committee, for different parts of things going on in the downtown area. And we have our different places that sell antiques, our antique shops that we have downtown. People come to Rowan to visit the antique shops that are downtown. I was talking to somebody the other day. And I know that I think he lives up around South Bend. And he said, oh, yeah, I come to Rowan all the time. My wife and I go there about 2 or 3 times a month to go to the different antique shops. And I'm going, wow, you don't expect that. You don't think of those kind of things. But, the downtown area, our downtown area, I always brag that we have no empty storefronts in the town of Rowan. Well, we have one empty storefront now. I know they're working on that. And then I always say, well, we've only got 2 blocks of businesses, but we don't have any empty storefronts. But the thing is, even if places like small towns that have 1 block, every one of those places is an empty storefront. And that's not what we have in Rowan. We have people coming in, we have businesses, they're thriving, they're staying, and that's the nice thing about Rowan.
Absolutely. And Bob, you talk about visitors coming for the thrift store or people coming to eat at the restaurants. Odds are when they come to Rowan, when they come to the town, they're going to walk across the street to eat when they're in town for the thrift store, or walk across the street to shop if they came to eat, right? I mean, so it's just so important that you all have a variety of offerings right there in your downtown.
That, and also downtown, we have a RC race car. I think it's called the Brickyard 500, and he mainly does his racing in the wintertime. But you wouldn't believe that place in the wintertime. I can see the parking lot from my living room, and that place is packed. And we have people from not only the state of Indiana, but we have people from all over other states that come in and race their RC cars, which I think is phenomenal, because nobody would ever think of Rowan bringing in people from all over. And I know that the Lions Club actually sells like donuts and things like that there. They allow them to come in and sell food. And that's great, because not only is it helping the RC track, but it's also helping the Lions Club and helping them so that they can do more things during the year.
Yeah, you can already hear, Bob, as you're talking about the different things going on in Rowan, the projects, the events, the importance of partnerships. partnerships with community organizations, partnerships with local government and private businesses. One of the largest partnerships or opportunities for collaboration that Wabash County's seen maybe ever was the Imagine 185 initiative. And you were a key piece and a key leader of that, Bob, long before I started with that work. And so if you wouldn't mind, for folks listening to the podcast, speak a little bit about your involvement in the Imagine 185 process. Why is a small community with a population of 478 residents, it can be scary to participate in something like that with our larger communities, with the City of Wabash, countywide, the town of North Manchester? Why is a town of 478, from really the very beginning, you said, yes, I want to be a part of this, and yes, the town of Roann is going to participate in Imagine 185?
That's not scary. It's needed. It has to be. Because when Keith brought that to me, Keith Gillenwater brought that idea to me at the very beginning. And he said, we could have all of the different towns all be in one room, and we can talk about things that we've got going on, projects that we've got going on, and then we can network. That was before we ever called it 185. It was just a bunch of people getting together in a room and then talking about projects going on.
Common challenges.
Yes. And the thing was, the very first thing that I thought of was, if I need a swing set, and that was my first thought, if I need a swing set and I go out and try to find a swing set, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars. But if I need a swing set, LeGros needs a swing set, LaFountain needs a swing set, and Wabash needs 3 swing sets, now we need 7 swing sets. Now we can go out, and now we have a buying power where instead of paying X amount of dollars at the very beginning, where maybe I would have spent $25,000, now I'm only spending $15,000, and I'm saving $10,000 to spend someplace else. And that was the first thing I thought about, was buying power for a small town. And that was what sold me on the whole thing, because I said, and that's what I told Keith, I can see this saving a town like me, a small town, money. But at the same time, I told Keith at the very beginning, I want to make sure that my 478 have the same say-so as the Wabashes, as the North Manchesters, and as the bigger towns. And Keith said, yes, you will have the same say. And that, too, elevated the town of Roann up to where everybody else was, and now we were all on the same level. And that was exciting, because now I knew that I could network with other people in the Wabash County. We could all go the same direction, and we could all work for that same thing. And then that way, instead of 478 people going in one direction and then 50,000 going another direction, we're all going in the same direction. And it gave Roann a buying power that we never had before. And I loved that part. And that's why I was right on. I said, absolutely, yes, let's do it.
Bob, you speak, and that's not common, right? That is not common for counties, for communities to collaborate like that across community lines, local government lines, across private sector, public sector. And that was all before it was branded Imagine 185, right? But it was all around the rallying cry of, if Wabash County is going to reverse population decline, we have to do it together. It has to be the 478 people from Roann moving in the same direction as the 30,000 as the population of Wabash County, right? And that unique collaboration didn't just stop at the completion of that planning process or all of that community engagement process, right? It continued, again, in an uncommon fashion of Wabash County and you all as the leaders of our community stepping up with the private sector and saying, we're going to be committed, just as we've been committed to addressing population decline through this collaborative planning process, we're going to be even more committed to this plan's implementation. And so, Bob, since the adoption of the Imagine 185 plan in the summer of 2022, speak a little bit about to your project, right? Your main projects that have came through that process.
Well, first of all, I want to say 2022, it took us a long time to get to 2022 because we started out and then all of a sudden the pandemic came. And we were trying to put everything together. And it was important for us not for 6 people to get together in one room and decide what was important for Wabash County. That would have never worked, never worked. What we wanted to do is we wanted to talk to those 30,000 people and say, what do you want for Wabash County? Not what 6 people think that Wabash County needs. And so we did that. And then during the pandemic, oh my gosh, we could not get in one room to do that. And we fought and kept trying to figure out ways to get past it. And finally, in 2022, we got it all put together, and then we knew which direction that Wabash County was going in, and then that way each town could get on board and work in that direction. And one of the things, and the main thing was population, and we wanted to make sure that we could bring in new people into Wabash County, and not only that, but retain them. And so all the different things that we were thinking about in our own communities, how can we make people come to Roann and want to live in Roann? One of the things that we thought about was, of course, we thought about internet, and that was a big struggle for the town of Roann because, I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing going through Roann so that we could get a good internet service. And then we wanted to make sure that we drew younger families in. And that's where the park came in. We wanted to make sure that we had something for the kids. A lot of people thought that Roann was a retirement community. They'd say, oh, yeah, Roann, that's a retirement community. But then when I looked at the mean of what the age was in the town of Roann, and I found out that it was 36, I'm going, that's not a retirement community. We've got to figure out something to keep those families into the town of Roann so that it can keep thriving and keep growing. And I thought that a park is really what we need. And we had a big area down there where we had raised the old school. It was in bad shape. We were able to get a community development block grant to raise the school, and that was done. We were able to do that on a 20/80. 20% was funds from the town of Roann, and 80% was federal funds, which was a really big deal. And we were able to get that job done, and then we had this blank canvas. It was a beautiful blank canvas that could now become a park. And it was kind of funny the way it all started. I had a piece of graph paper, and I started drawing swing sets and drawing things like pavilions and trying to figure out where parking lots were going to go. And yes, I'm a little bit nerdy. I had to go out. I took a measuring wheel, and I measured that whole area. I think it's 7.42 acres. And I measured every inch of that place and where things could go and where parking lots could go in. And I did it. I laid it down on a piece of graph paper. When I was in high school, I took 4 years of architectural drawing. So that was kind of fun to get back into that area. It was architectural drawing was fun. It was just not for me. My teacher always told me that your drawings are pretty, but they're dirty. Because I'd always run my arm through it and everything else. So it wasn't a profession that I would be able to go to, but it was fun for me to do that. And then, of course, I'm never satisfied with just doing that. Now I had to color code it. So if you see and I still have that first one, it'll be color coded and everything. And then one day, I took this piece of paper and I showed it to this guy. And I said, here is what I think the park might look like, but I don't know where to go from here. And the next thing I knew, this guy that I had never met before, dropped something in my lap that was so beautiful. It just brought it all to life. And Alex, when you did that, you went way beyond for me. I couldn't believe that someone could see my vision and bring it to life like that. And that to me was the greatest thing that has ever happened with this park. And it really catapulted the whole project. The project was always there. It never got stale. I never let it get stale. I kept talking about it. And then all of a sudden, it got a new breath of life. And when that happened, and then I really started pushing it. And we were able to get some funds that just started popping in, and that was a great thing. So far, we've had a lot of money that has been donated to this project. And I said donated. I didn't say we used tax base. And that is really special to me, that so many people open their hearts to a project like this. And I'm extremely, extremely excited because now we're going to get to do I almost said CDBG, a community development block grant with that, which is another $377,000 on top of I think it's about $477,000 that we're going to put into this. Now we're talking about getting a big part of this done because it costs a lot of money to move dirt. I never knew it costs so much money to move dirt, and it does. And then you've had the buildings, and you have this that has to be done, and that needs to be done. And then all of a sudden, everything starts falling together. That's really cool, but the thing is that we still have a long way to go. And we've got some other things like a patronicity grant that we're working on. And I'm sure that that's going to be something really special for this project also.
Bob, in economic community development, we talk a lot about different initiatives and different projects, but really what it's boiled down to is you identify a community need, right, or a vision, like the park project. You move it along to where all it's missing is money, right? So through due diligence, through design, through community engagement around specific elements of the park, you identify the funding source, you secure the funding, you implement the project. And the Roann Park is a prime example of that, right? This is a vision that the community and you have had for close to
8 years.
So coming up on a decade, and have just continued to move this project along every step of the way to where now, as you'd mentioned, you've raised a lot of private money to support this project. It was included in Wabash County's Stellar Pathways Program application as Roann's major stellar project, which is the $377,000 in CDBG grant funding to go towards the project. And you've just moved this project, continued it going forward, right? Even when it's hard, even when there's different things that have come up in the project, and every step of the way, You just kept moving it forward for your community and for the future of people that'll get to utilize that park that may not have ever met Bob Ferguson or known all that's gone in to bringing this park to fruition. And you've done that. You've continued to push this project forward to where now we're looking at groundbreaking in the fall, late summer or fall of 2025.
And I am so excited about that too. And the thing is, you can't, you talk about the things that as you're going through it, there's a stumbling block here and a stumbling block there. And there's times that it's just so hard that you wonder, why are you even doing this in the first place? And then you realize that it's not for you. It's not even for the town. It's for the kids that's going to grow up in that town. And we have to make sure that we're doing something for the kids. I mean, when you're talking about a mean of 36, now you're talking about kids in this town. Because there's a ton of kids that have nothing to do. And so you have to make sure that everything you do, and I try to keep that in my mind all the time, that anything that we do has to be geared toward the kids. Because those kids are going to grow up, and we want to make sure that we give them a reason to stay in Roann, right? Because we want to make sure that we're keeping the population. And so we want to give them a reason. And the best thing to do is give them a wonderful experience when they grow up, that it makes them think of the town of Roann first when they're looking for a place to raise their kids. And that is what's important to me. And we have to make sure that whenever we think of anything, we think of that younger generation. You can't think of the older generation because they're going to be gone soon. You think about that younger generation. And I can't help but think about them because my wife and I have been married 55 years. We have 3 daughters. We have 7 grandkids, 14 great-grandkids, and we just found out yesterday that there's another one coming. So that makes 15 great-grandkids.
The Fergusons are doing their job to reverse population decline in Wabash County.
Absolutely. And so
Generationally.
So, yes.
Congratulations, Bob.
Thank you.
That's exciting. And thank you so much for sharing your vision just about the park, but really that deeper meaning of what it means to the future of the community, right? That's one thing we talk a lot about on this podcast is we are trying to work every day to create a place that kids can grow up and they're proud to be from, and then ultimately proud to come back to when they get ready to raise a family, right? And how important that is to Wabash County's population. The Roann Park is one of those projects, right, where somebody could read about the park or even be at the park when it's complete, and they're enjoying that amenity. But the vision that you just articulated there, Bob, about the importance is, yes, it's just a park, but it's a part of such a larger vision and a part of all of the other things in a community, the sidewalks, the lighting, the businesses, education, broadband like you shared, rural internet, right? All of those things together are what make that experience for a person to grow up here and be proud to come home.
And the nice thing about it is, I mean, if you're a family and you're looking for a place to go and to raise your children, this advertisement is about Roann right now, because Roann's a great place to bring your children, your family, and to raise them. Because in Roann, I say this all the time, and someday I'm going to get in trouble for saying it. I can sit during a school day and I'll see a school bus coming through for MSD Wabash. Another one comes through for Wabash. Another one comes through for North Miami. And another one comes through for North Manchester. That means that I can send my children to any one of those 4 schools. And what that means to me is that each one of those schools, now they're the ones with the grade card. It's not my student. Each one of those schools have a grade card because now I can pick what's best for my student. Maybe it's robotics, and I want to send my children to Northfield, or maybe it's band and choir, and I want to send my kids to North Miami. Wherever it might be that I can pick for my child and give them the best education possible. And what I always worried about was, yes, now that we've got that part in the town of Roann, we don't have the broadband to take care of what's next. Now the town of Roann has broadband. And so now that puts us into the next part of education. And now when you come to Roann and you bring your children, you know you can get them a good education. We have things for them to do. We have broadband. We have education. We have a Carnegie Library that's looking out for them. We've got a park down here. This town is made for kids. We are making this town for kids, and I love that part of it.
You've created that stickiness that we talk a lot about, right? It's all of those things coming together that make Roann a great place to call home or raise a family, right? So
Yes.
I appreciate you sharing that, Bob, because it's so critical and really is a part of Imagine 185, right? That's what it's all about. And the city of Wabash, the town of North Manchester, the town of Roann, LaGros, LaFountain, communities of all sizes are living and focused on that every single day to continue to position their community to be prepared for young people and young families to call home.
Yep.
And that's a testament to your leadership, Bob.
No.
But all the partners that make it possible.
Absolutely.
Right? But
all the partners that make it possible, because we're all still working together. And that's the neat thing about it. All of Wabash County, we're all gathered together and going in that same direction. And I mean, how many counties in the state of Indiana can say that their whole county is moving in the same direction? And I think that makes Wabash County unique, and I am very proud to be a citizen of the Wabash County.
Bob, I don't think we've covered it yet. People have listening to this podcast by this point know that you are a cheerleader, not just for the town of Roann, but for Wabash County. Talk a little bit about your day-to-day and what your role is for the town of Roann.
Oh, it differs every day.
Other than being the unofficial mayor and radio voice and musician. And
I've never been afraid to try something new. I know I went back to college because I wanted a degree at the age of 60. And so it was kind of funny sitting in my classes with 18-year-olds and going through that kind of thing. But one of the classes, we had to say 3 things that were, 2 of them were true, and 1 of them was not. And I said, well, I toured Europe in a rock band. I was a clown in the circus, and I've been married 5 times. And everybody thought, yeah, well, he's been married 5 times. But the truth, because one of them was supposed to be a lie, and they all picked either circus or rock band. But the one thing is, I said earlier, I've been married 55 years. When I was in the Navy, I toured with the very first Navy rock band in Europe. When my wife and I lived in Peru, did you notice I said Peru? When we lived in Peru, my kids were part of the circus, and I clowned with the circus and helped train and do things like that. I've driven semi. I was in the Navy for 10 years. So I've done a lot of different things in my lifetime. I've never been afraid to try something new. And that I try to tell the young ones, the ones that's coming out of college. My wife and I had a tanning salon in North Manchester for quite a few years. And we had a lot of kids coming in from the college. And some of them, we had a long bar in there where they could get like a nature ice or something like that and just sit and study. And we had a lot of kids that would just come in and just do nothing but talk. And we kind of became their mom and dad away from home. And it was neat to have them come in and share life experiences with them. But I think that's important, that we need to be able to share our good life experiences. And sometimes maybe we can keep them from doing some bad things because it didn't work out so well for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Bob. Bob, what haven't we talked about today that you want to make sure we get on?
Oh, I think we've hit just about everything. I know that I really enjoyed my time in the military. That was a great time for me. I've learned so many different things through the military, and it has given me a sense of wanting to be in one place for the rest of my life. And I know that when my wife and I moved to Roann 37 years ago, I knew that when we got here, my wife said, we're not going anyplace else. We've moved enough in our lifetime. And that's where we decided to put down roots. And we are happy that we've done that. The house that we live in now, our great-grandchildren, even our grandchildren, don't know of us living anyplace else, which is really, really cool. So they've now picked Roann as, oh, that's where my grandma and grandpa lived. And we're pretty proud of that.
And Wabash County and the town of Roann are extremely fortunate that, Bob, you and your wife chose to plant those roots 37 years ago and call Roann home. Because as we've talked about, all of the momentum that Roann and Wabash County is experiencing, you're a significant piece of that, Bob, and leading and having that vision that's required in order to bring some of these things to life that Roann will see here in the coming months and years ahead.
I don't think so, but there's a lot of people in this county that work diligently, day and night, and that is all that's on their mind is Wabash County. And those are the people that are going to take us into that next generation. And it's people like you. And I appreciate you.
Oh, it takes all of us, Bob. I appreciate you saying that. Bob Ferguson, thank you for joining the Thrive in Wabash County podcast. I hope our listeners got to enjoy the very talented radio voice you have, or if they're watching on YouTube, the very colorful shirt you wore today. But thank you for spending the time, Bob, and sharing a little bit about you and the town of Roann, its rich history, but also what's on the horizon and what's to come.
If some people are wondering where they might have heard me before, when I first got out of the military, I worked at WWKI, and then later on in my life, I worked at WAYT, and then at WWYP, which was on top of the rock in Wabash. So, yes.
Man, I hope that we can gain some listeners from Bob Ferguson's voice. This is another episode of the Thrive in Wabash County podcast. Thank you to the generous support of the City of Wabash, the Gilman Investment Fund, the Sandra Kunkel Trust, Paperworks Industries, the Community Foundation of Wabash County, and Visit Wabash County for making this podcast possible.